Welcome back to Zorilla HOA Stories. Drop your country or city name in comments. Chapter 1. The garage door opens. The late afternoon sun made the neighborhood look perfect. Lawns glowed green, trimmed to the same length. Driveways shined from fresh pressure washes. Flower beds lined with neat mulch spilled color onto the sidewalks. A sprinkler somewhere clicked in rhythm, spraying mist that caught the light like glass dust. It looked peaceful, too peaceful. I stood at the edge of my driveway, the garage remote heavy in my palm. My thumb hovered over the button. For months, I had pictured this moment. Long days of work in the shadows, the smell of grease and paint clinging to my skin, tools scattered across the concrete floor, the hum of a fluorescent bulb above me. Every screw, every coat of polish, every replaced part had built toward this one reveal. I pressed the button. The garage door rattled and groaned, dragging itself upward like a curtain rising on a stage. Inch by inch, the nose of the car emerged from the darkness. The sunlight caught the hood first, deep red metallic, smooth as glass. Chrome trim flashed bright enough to sting my eyes. By the time the door was fully open, the whole machine stood there, rumbling softly like a caged animal. My car, my work, my pride. I ran a hand over the hood, warm under my fingertips. Months ago, it had been a pile of rust and dust, close to death. Now it was alive again. Whoa! The voice startled me. Two kids on bikes had stopped on the sidewalk. Their eyes widened at the sight of the car. "Look at that," one whispered. "Dude, it's like from a movie," the other said, circling slowly. I laughed, pride swelling. "Took a long time, but she's back." They nodded, jaws slack. From 2 doors down, Mr. Alvarez straightened from his raking. He gave me a firm nod. "Nice ride. Thanks." I called back. A young couple walking their Labrador slowed their pace. The husband pointed, murmuring something I couldn't hear, but the smile on the wife's face said enough. Even the dog paused, ears perked toward the growl of the engine. For the first time since I'd moved into this community, I felt proud of what I had to show. Not the manicured lawn or the color-matched shutters that the HOA demanded. Something real. Something mine. Then the air changed. Karen appeared. The HOA president. Enforcer of rules. Hunter of violations. She walked like she owned the street. Mid-50s, hair pulled so tight it looked painful. Oversized sunglasses, clipboard tucked under one arm, and her little white dog yanking on its jeweled leash. She stopped across the street. Her dog barked sharply, but she didn't move. She stared at my car, eyes hidden behind her glasses but sharp enough to cut through glass. I tried to keep my voice polite. "Afternoon." No answer. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying something rotten on the pavement. "Nice day." I tried again. Her reply was cold, clipped. "Where did you get that?" The kids exchanged a nervous glance. The couple tightened their grip on the dog leash. I frowned. "The car?" I restored it. "In the garage." "What?" Karen stepped closer, heels clicking against the sidewalk. Her little dog yapped, tugging hard. "That's interesting," she said slowly. "Very interesting. It's just a car," I said carefully. "Mine." She gave a bitter laugh, dry as sand. "We'll see about that." I blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" Instead of answering, she pulled her phone from her pocket. She raised it, snapped a picture of the hood. Then another of the license plate. Then one of me, standing there beside it. Click, click, click. "Hey," I stepped off the driveway. "What do you think you're doing?" "HOA business," she said flatly. "Don't interfere." "HOA business? It's my property. You can't." "Everything in this neighborhood falls under HOA regulation," she cut in smoothly. "And this," she gestured at the car, "doesn't look right." Mr. Alvarez coughed awkwardly and turned back to his yard. The couple tugged their dog away quickly. Even the kids pedaled off, casting nervous glances over their shoulders. "Karen," I said firmly, "I've got the title, registration, receipts. Everything. It's mine." Her lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. "Then you shouldn't mind a little verification." She snapped one more photo, then tucked the phone away. "Enjoy your project. While you can." Without another word, she tugged her dog and strode off, tapping furiously on her screen as she walked. The rumble of the car suddenly felt louder, like a warning. My stomach twisted. This was supposed to be the moment I celebrated. Instead, it felt like the start of something ugly. I pulled the car back into the garage, shut the door, and stood in the dark for a long moment, hand pressed to the cool metal. The glow of pride had drained away, replaced by unease. Inside the house, I dropped the remote on the counter and stared at it. My chest felt heavy, like the air itself had thickened. What was she planning? That evening, I tried to distract myself with dinner, but my mind kept circling back. I'd seen Karen pull these stunts before. Letters slipped into mailboxes about grass lengths. Warnings over trash bins left visible for 5 minutes too long. But this felt different. This wasn't a fine about a lawn or a mailbox color. This was personal. Around 9, I went to the front window and peered out. Porch lights glowed up and down the street. Curtains drawn. Families settling in. Except across the street. Through a thin gap in her blinds, I saw Karen at her dining table. The glow of her phone lit her face. Her fingers moved fast, tapping, typing. Every few seconds, she glanced toward my house, toward my garage. I stepped back, heart pounding. For a second, I considered marching across the street, knocking on her door, demanding to know what she thought she was doing. But that was exactly what she wanted. Confrontation. Fuel. Something she could twist into harassment or aggression. So I paced, back and forth through my living room, restless, angry. The minutes dragged. Then, just past 10, I heard it. Click. A faint sound outside, like a phone camera. I froze. I slipped to the side window and eased the blinds apart. There she was, Karen, standing on the sidewalk across from my driveway. Dog leash looped loosely around one wrist. Phone raised. Snap, snap, snap. She photographed my garage, my mailbox, my windows. The flash went off once, faint but sharp in the dark. My chest tightened. I yanked the door open. Karen, my voice cut the night. What the hell are you doing? She didn't flinch. She lowered the phone slowly. Her dog barked once, then quieted. I'm documenting, she said calmly. For the board. It's 10 o'clock. I snapped. You can't just lurk around taking pictures of people's homes. I'm not lurking. Her voice was level, almost rehearsed. I'm ensuring compliance. You're crossing a line. She tilted her head, smiling faintly. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear. The words made my blood run cold. She turned, tugging her dog, and walked away. Her sandals tapped against the pavement until the sound faded into silence. I stood in the doorway, fists clenched, heart hammering. Back inside, I locked the door, drew the blinds, sat in the dark. Every sound outside, the slam of a car door, the bark of a dog, set me on edge. At one point, I swore I heard footsteps near my driveway. When I checked, the street was empty under the pale glow of the street lamp. Still, I couldn't shake it. Karen wasn't finished. She had just started. Chapter 2. Karen's First Strike. The next morning, the neighborhood looked calm again. Birds perched on the fences, sprinklers hissed quietly, and the cul-de-sac had its picture-perfect silence. But I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. Karen's stare, her camera clicks, the way she'd said, "Well, you can," it all replayed in my head. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself she was bluffing. After all, what could she really do? Still, I checked the driveway twice before leaving for work. The BMW sat gleaming in the morning light, black paint so clean it mirrored the clouds. To me, it looked like a trophy, a reward for months of sweat and patience. To her, it looked like something else. I just didn't know what yet. When I came back later that day, I saw it immediately. The envelope, bright white, taped to my front door. The HOA logo in bold at the top. Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association. I ripped it down before even unlocking the door. My chest tightened as I scanned the letter. Violation notice. Property address. My address. Date. Today. Violations. Unauthorized vehicle modification/restoration. Unauthorized display of unapproved vehicle on driveway. Failure to request prior approval for garage usage related to mechanical work. Required action. Remove or relocate the unauthorized vehicle within 7 days. Submit an appeal in writing if you believe this notice is in error. Failure to comply may result in fines and legal action. Signed, Karen W. HOA president. I read it 3 times, each word cutting deeper. Unauthorized vehicle. That BMW wasn't some abandoned junk. It was titled Insured Mine. Remove or relocate. This was my property, my garage, my driveway. I slammed the paper onto the kitchen counter and paced. My phone buzzed. Text from neighbors. Mr. Alvarez, hey man, sorry about the notice. Karen came by earlier asking questions. I didn't say much. The quiet couple. We saw the car, it looks great. Don't let her scare you. But encouragement didn't ease the fury rising in my chest. She hadn't wasted a day. She'd gone straight from taking photos to filing a formal strike. I sat down hard on the couch, staring at the notice again. There was a line at the bottom, almost like a taunt. Failure to comply may result in towing at owner's expense. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside made me peek through the blinds. A car, door slamming, footsteps on the sidewalk, even a rustle of leaves. My mind kept picturing a tow truck creeping into the cul-de-sac at 3 a.m., chains clanking, dragging my BMW away while Karen stood smugly in her bathrobe watching. By morning, the decision was made. I wasn't going to roll over. I gathered every piece of documentation I had, the bill of sale, the title, the insurance, even photos of me working on the car. Then I sat down at my laptop and typed my appeal letter. Appeal statement. To whom it may concern, this notice is in error. The vehicle in question is not abandoned, not unapproved, and not unauthorized. It is a registered, insured personal vehicle, restored on my property with no HOA rules violated. I request that this violation be rescinded immediately. Sincerely, my name. I printed it, signed it, and slid it under the HOA office door. A part of me felt relieved, like I'd finally punched back. But I didn't know who I was really up against. 3 days later, the HOA meeting came. The clubhouse smelled faintly of coffee and old carpet. Rows of plastic chairs were half filled with neighbors. Some were there for small things, trash can disputes, lawn complaints, but I could feel their eyes on me. Word had already spread. Karen sat at the front table, flanked by 2 other board members. She wore a navy blazer and had her papers stacked neatly in front of her. When she saw me, she gave that same smile that wasn't a smile. Next order of business, she said crisply. Vehicle violation at my address. She shuffled her papers and held one up like it was a piece of evidence in a courtroom. As you can see, this resident has displayed a large, black vehicle on their property without prior approval. The HOA covenants clearly state that any restoration projects or unapproved displays are prohibited. I stood. Excuse me, but that's not true. The covenants don't mention personal vehicles. They ban junk cars, not licensed, insured ones. Karen tilted her head. And how do we know this vehicle is licensed and insured? I slammed a folder on the table. Here, every document. Title, registration, insurance. The room went quiet. Neighbors leaned forward, curious. One of the board members, a balding man with glasses, glanced through the papers. It seems in order. I thought I'd won. But Karen wasn't finished. She tapped her phone and projected a photo onto the wall. A blown-up shot of me in my driveway, tools scattered around, the BMW halfway under the garage door. There, she said, pointing like a prosecutor. Mechanical work in public view. Against the rules. Gasps. Whispers. My pulse spiked. That photo is taken out of context. I wasn't running a workshop. I was parking my car. Karen leaned forward. Then why all the tools? I was polishing the chrome. That's not mechanical work. But she wasn't really interested in the truth. She was performing for the board, for the neighbors, for anyone who would listen. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, voice sharp, we cannot allow Maplewood Estates to turn into a parking lot of unsanctioned vehicles. Standards matter. If we bend the rules for one, we bend them for all. Her words cut through the room like a blade. The board murmured. The neighbors shifted. Finally, the man with glasses cleared his throat. We'll review the appeal and deliver a decision within 7 days. Karen's smile widened. Very well. Meeting adjourned. I left the clubhouse, shaking with anger. Outside, Mr. Alvarez caught up to me. Don't let her win, he said quietly. She's been like this for years. Always needs control. I nodded, jaw tight. I'm not backing down. But when I got home, something stopped me in my tracks. On my windshield, tucked under the wiper, was another envelope. This one wasn't from the HOA office. It was handwritten. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with block letters. She's watching you. For a long moment, I just stood in the driveway, the note trembling in my hand. My eyes darted across the street. Curtains shifted. A silhouette moved in an upstairs window. Somewhere a dog barked. I shoved the note in my pocket and glanced at my BMW. The glossy black paint reflected the whole neighborhood back at me. Perfect houses, perfect lawns, and somewhere inside all that, someone who had just slipped me a warning. But was it from a neighbor trying to help? Or from Karen herself, letting me know this was just the beginning? Either way, one thing was clear. This wasn't about a car anymore. It was war. Chapter 3. Escalation at Midnight. The note sat on my kitchen counter all evening, a white square of dread against the wood. I kept glancing at it as if it might change, as if the letters might rearrange into something less threatening. But they didn't. She's watching you. The words echoed in my head. I thought about crumpling it, burning it, anything to erase it. But something in me said to keep it. Evidence. If Karen wanted a war, I'd need proof of her games. By the time the clock hit 10, I'd locked the doors twice, pulled every blind shut, and checked on the BMW 3 times. It gleamed silently in the driveway under the soft street lamp glow, a jewel on display. Too visible. I hated that Karen knew it was out there. I hated more that maybe she wasn't the only one watching. Around midnight, I heard it. A faint hum. Low, steady, mechanical. My eyes snapped open. I rolled out of bed, heart pounding, and crept to the window. Pulling the curtain aside, just enough, I peered into the cul-de-sac. There, at the end of the street, sat a truck. Engine idling. No headlights. Just a dark silhouette with an orange glow from a cigarette inside. I froze. Tow truck? Pickup? Hard to tell. But it wasn't normal. My gaze darted to the BMW. Still there. Still untouched. The hum continued. Then movement. The truck inched forward. Slowly. Too slowly, like it was stalking prey. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over 911. My breathing grew shallow, chest tight. The truck rolled closer. 10 feet. 20 feet. I could almost hear the gravel crunch under its tires. Suddenly it stopped. The driver door cracked open. A figure stepped out, broad shoulders, baseball cap pulled low. No tow chains, no tools visible. Just a man standing in the dark, staring at my driveway. Adrenaline surged through me. I bolted down the stairs, flicked on the porch light, and yanked the front door open. "Hey!" I shouted into the night. "What the hell are you doing?" The man froze. For one long, electric second, he just stood there. Then he turned, climbed back into his truck, and drove off without a word. The hum faded into silence. I stood barefoot on the porch, every nerve buzzing. My neighbors' houses were dark, blinds closed tight. Either nobody saw, or nobody wanted to admit they did. I looked back at the BMW. Still safe. For now. But the message was clear. They could come at any time. The next morning, I walked outside and felt every pair of unseen eyes on me. Curtains twitched. A door quietly shut. Maplewood Estates looked as calm as ever, but I knew better now. On the windshield of the BMW, a fresh smear of something dark caught my eye. I leaned closer. Coffee. Someone had poured a half-empty cup down the glass, sticky and dripping across the hood. I clenched my fists. It wasn't random. It wasn't kids. It was targeted. I snapped photos, documenting everything. Then I cleaned it up, hands shaking with fury. By the time I left for work, I'd made up my mind. I was installing cameras. That evening, I drove to the hardware store and bought a set of security cameras. Motion-activated, high-resolution. I spent hours mounting them. One above the garage, one covering the driveway, one by the front door. When the last one clicked into place, I finally felt a sliver of control return. At least now. If anyone came near the BMW, I'd know. But Karen wasn't done. The following day, another envelope appeared. This time in my mailbox, not taped to the door. HOA notice, second warning. Violation. Continued unauthorized storage of unapproved vehicle. Fine, $200 to be added to next month's dues. Signed, Karen W., HOA President. I nearly ripped the letter in half. $200 for nothing. For daring to own a car she didn't like. I stormed into my kitchen, grabbed my phone, and dialed the HOA office. Maplewood Estates, this is Diane. A receptionist answered, polite but weary. This is my name. I'm calling about a violation notice that is absolutely false. Sir, I can log your complaint, but all disputes go through the board review process. Then put me through to Karen. I'm sorry, she doesn't take direct calls. You'll have to wait until the next scheduled meeting. Of course. Shielded. Protected. She could fire arrows from her fortress while I had to fight blind. That night, the cameras came alive. 1:12 a.m. My phone buzzed, motion alert. I opened the feed and saw it. A shadow crossing my driveway. Zoom in. A hooded figure crept toward the BMW, flashlight in hand, glinting on the chrome. My heart thundered. I tapped the mic on the security app. My voice boomed from the camera's speaker. Step away from the car. The figure froze, head snapping up. Then, without a word, they bolted, vanishing into the dark. I rewound the footage, frame by frame. The hood hid most of their face, but one shot caught the jawline, the posture. I couldn't be certain, but it looked like a woman. My stomach dropped. Could it have been Karen herself? The next day, I decided enough was enough. I printed stills from the video, circled the figure in red, and mailed copies to the board along with a formal complaint. My property is being targeted. Harassment has escalated from false violation notices to attempted vandalism. If the HOA refuses to act, I will involve law enforcement. For once, I felt ahead of her. Proof. Evidence. Something she couldn't spin. But I underestimated Karen. 2 evenings later, the police showed up. Red and blue lights washed over my driveway. Neighbors peeked from windows, phones in hand, recording. An officer knocked on my door. Are you my name? Yes. What's going on? We received a report of a stolen vehicle on this property. I blinked. Stolen? That's my car. The officer's face stayed neutral. Do you have proof of ownership? Yes, of course. I rushed to grab the title, registration, insurance. My hands shook as I handed them over. The officer studied the papers, then the BMW, then me. Everything looks in order, he finally said. But you should know, your HOA president was the one who called it in. My blood boiled. She told you it was stolen? He nodded, said it matched the description of a recently purchased vehicle. Claimed she saw it leave a dealership last week. I nearly laughed in disbelief. That's insane. I've owned this car for months. Restored it myself. The officer gave a tired sigh. Look, between us, these calls waste our time. But if she keeps filing them, we're obligated to respond. Just keep your paperwork handy. He handed me back the documents and left. The patrol car rolled away, leaving me in the glow of my porch light, fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Neighbors whispered from their lawns. Cameras clicked. I knew the story would spread by morning. Karen had tried to brand me a thief, and she almost succeeded. I went inside, slammed the door, and collapsed into a chair. Karen had crossed the line. Notices, fines, harassment, that was one thing. But calling the police? Trying to paint me as a criminal? This was no longer about rules. It was personal. I pulled up the security footage again, staring at the hooded figure. Was it her? Or someone she'd sent? Whoever it was, I knew one thing. They'd be back. I leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen. Come again, I whispered. This time, I'll be ready. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't just be the car at risk next time. Karen was escalating. And if I didn't fight back harder, she might take everything. Chapter 4. The HOA votes against me. The night after the police left, I sat in my living room with every light on, staring at the documents that proved the BMW was mine. Title, registration, insurance, all in neat folders. Proof against Karen's lies. But proof wasn't enough anymore. She didn't need truth. She had power. And in Maplewood Estates, power came in the form of the HOA board. 2 days later, a letter appeared in my mailbox. This time, it wasn't a violation notice. It was an official HOA meeting agenda. Item 3, resident violation hearing. Unapproved vehicle, my address. Date, Friday, 7 p.m. Location, Maplewood Clubhouse. The words hit me like a stone. This wasn't just another warning. This was a public hearing. She wanted me humiliated. She wanted the neighborhood to watch as she painted me the villain. And worst of all, she wanted a vote. I prepared. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. I reviewed every HOA covenant, highlighted every clause that proved I wasn't breaking rules. I printed documents, organized photos of the BMW, even found old HOA newsletters praising community pride that featured neighbors showing off their cars. If Karen thought I'd walk in unarmed, she was wrong. Still, deep inside, I knew it wouldn't be about evidence. It would be about influence. And influence was her weapon. Friday came too fast. The clubhouse parking lot was packed. More cars than usual. People who rarely attended HOA meetings had shown up tonight. Not for landscaping disputes. Not for pool fees. But for me. The story had spread, Karen's version of it anyway. As I stepped inside, whispers rippled through the crowd. I caught fragments. Stolen car, did you hear? HOA rules. Can't just do whatever. Nice car, though. The air smelled of burnt coffee and cheap carpet cleaner. Folding chairs lined the room, every one filled. Some neighbors leaned against walls. At the front, the board table stood elevated like a judge's bench. And in the center sat Karen. Navy blazer again. Glasses perched on her nose. Papers stacked neatly in front of her like a prosecutor preparing a case. When she saw me, she smiled. That same cold, razor-thin smile. The meeting started with minor business. Trash bins, landscaping fees, swimming pool repairs. But nobody cared. Everyone was waiting for item 3. Finally, Karen cleared her throat. Next agenda item. Violation hearing for my address. The room hushed. She adjusted her glasses, her voice carrying sharp and clear. Neighbors, as you know, our community has strict covenants to preserve property values and maintain standards. Unfortunately, one resident has chosen to disregard these covenants by displaying an unauthorized, unapproved vehicle in clear view. Despite multiple notices and opportunities for compliance, the violation continues. She tapped her papers. We must now decide as a board whether fines, liens, or further action are warranted. Gasps, whispers. The words liens and further action hung heavy in the air. I stood, clutching my folder. With respect, I said, forcing calm into my voice, that's not true. This isn't an unapproved vehicle. It's my car. Registered, insured, restored legally on my own property. I have the documents right here. I laid them on the table, sliding copies to the board members. One of them, the balding man with glasses, glanced through the papers. His brow furrowed. This all seems in order. The car is properly registered. I don't see how it qualifies as unauthorized. A flicker of hope lit in me. But Karen pounced. Registration isn't the issue, she snapped. The issue is the blatant disregard for community standards. Tools, equipment, visible work in the driveway. This isn't a mechanic's garage. This is Maplewood Estates. And the covenants clearly prohibit mechanical work in public view. I clenched my fists. I wasn't running a shop. I polished chrome, changed detailing. That's it. Not mechanical repairs. Karen smirked. Semantics. The spirit of the rule is clear. And let's not forget, this vehicle bears a striking resemblance to one recently reported stolen from a dealership just miles away. My chest tightened. That's a lie. The police came. They checked everything. I showed them proof. The car is mine. The room buzzed. Neighbors whispered, heads turning, eyes darting. Truth versus rumor. Karen raised a finger, silencing the murmurs. Even if we accept his paperwork, she said coolly, we must ask ourselves, is this the image we want for Maplewood? A loud, modified car sitting out for everyone to see? Attracting attention, lowering values, creating disturbances at midnight. My jaw dropped. Midnight? She was twisting the break-in attempt as if I caused it. That's not fair, I shot back. You know someone tried to vandalize it. I caught them on camera. Karen folded her hands. Do you have evidence it wasn't? Orchestrated? Gasps. The implication hit me like a punch. She was suggesting I staged it. That I'd scare my own neighbors just to play the victim. Rage burned in me. You're out of your mind. But I saw it, the doubt spreading in the room. seed she planted with careful words, now rooting in my neighbors' minds. The board huddled briefly, whispering among themselves. My heart pounded in my ears. Finally, the man with glasses cleared his throat. The board has reviewed the documents, and while ownership is valid, we agree that visible work and unapproved displays may violate the spirit of the covenants. Therefore, we motion to uphold the violation and enforce fines until the vehicle is removed or stored out of view. I couldn't breathe. The words blurred. Motion to uphold, fines, remove vehicle. Karen smiled wide, triumphant. All in favor? Hands rose. 1, 2, 3. All opposed. One hand hesitated, then dropped. Karen banged her gavel. Motion passes. Effective immediately. The room erupted, some neighbors nodding in approval, others whispering uneasily. But it didn't matter. The vote was done. I stood frozen, heat crawling up my neck. Removed. Fined. Outvoted. Karen turned to me, voice dripping with false sympathy. You have 7 days to comply. Failure to do so will result in additional fines and possible legal action. Her smile widened, sharp as glass. Meeting adjourned. I stumbled out of the clubhouse into the cool night air. My vision blurred, rage and disbelief tangling inside me. Neighbors streamed out behind me, their eyes avoiding mine. No one spoke. No one defended me. Only Mr. Alvarez approached, his voice low. She's dangerous, he said. You can't fight her alone. I clenched my teeth. Then I'll find a way. Because I'm not losing that car. And I'm not letting her win. But deep down, I felt the walls closing in. The board was hers. The neighbors were scared. The rules were weapons she wielded with precision. And now, she had the vote. That night, I sat in the dark, staring out the window at the BMW in the driveway. Its black surface reflected the street lamp glow, silent and proud. But all I could hear was Karen's voice. 7 days, remove it, or else. The war wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about survival. And I had no idea what she would do next. Chapter 5, The Walls Close In. The night after the HOA meeting felt heavier than the summer air outside. I sat at my kitchen table, the fluorescent light buzzing faintly above, a pile of papers spread out before me. Letters, bylaws, highlighted rules. My weak shield against an enemy that had grown sharper and louder. The HOA board had voted against me. The black BMW was a violation of community harmony, according to Karen's smug reading of Section 14B of the Neighborhood Handbook. In plain words, they wanted it gone. I looked out the window. The car sat silently in the driveway, reflecting the moon like a mirror. To me, it wasn't just a car. It was months of savings, weeks of work, and countless hours of labor. It was freedom. But to Karen, it was ammunition. The first signs of pressure. The morning after, I stepped outside to find another envelope taped to my front door. The same red HOA letterhead, the same sterile tone. Second notice. Immediate removal of unapproved vehicle required within 72 hours. Noncompliance will result in daily fines of $200. I tore the paper from the door, crushing in my fist. $200 a day? I muttered. From across the street, Karen's curtains twitched. I saw her silhouette, still as a hawk watching prey. She wanted me to see her watching. "Good morning," she finally called out, sliding her window open with theatrical sweetness. "Quite the trouble that car is causing you, huh?" I didn't answer. I went back inside and slammed the door harder than I meant to. But it wasn't just Karen. That week, neighbors who used to smile at me now looked away when I waved. The Johnsons, who once borrowed my ladder, crossed the street when they saw me walking my dog. Even old Mr. Fletcher, who'd praised my BMW the day I pulled it out of the garage, now avoided eye contact, muttering about not getting involved. It felt like the walls of the neighborhood were shifting inward, closing around me. A visit from the police. On the third day, just after sunset, flashing red and blue lights painted my living room walls. I stepped outside to find 2 officers standing by their cruiser, Karen standing proudly on the curb with folded arms. "Sir," one officer said, "we received a complaint about a stolen vehicle matching the description of the BMW parked here." I blinked. "Stolen? That's my car." Karen cut in sharply. That's exactly what thieves say, officer. I just bought a BMW like that, and mine was reported missing last week. This man opened his garage, and there it was. Don't you find that suspicious? Her voice carried through the street, and I could see faces pressed against windows, neighbors peeking out like an audience at a play. My chest tightened. This is absurd. I have the title, the registration. You want proof? I'll show you. The officers exchanged a look. Go ahead, sir. We'll need to see that. Inside, my hand shook as I dug through the filing cabinet. I found a folder, clutching the papers like lifelines, and handed them over under the porch light. The officer read, nodded, and returned them. Everything checks out. This car is registered to you, sir. Karen gasped like she'd been stabbed. That's impossible. He must have forged it. Ma'am, the officer said firmly, false police reports are a serious matter. Don't waste our time again. They left, but Karen didn't. She stood there, face twisted in fury, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. This isn't over. Financial squeeze. The fines began immediately. Every week, a new letter arrived from the HOA. $1,400 due for noncompliance. $3,200 past due balance. Threat of lien against my property. I called, I argued, I wrote emails quoting bylaws and property rights. But the board, led by Karen, replied only with automated sounding messages. The money I had saved was vanishing into penalties I refused to pay. Each notice felt less like a warning and more like a tightening noose. By week's end, the total had climbed to over $5,000. My stomach churned as I checked my bank account. And still, the BMW sat in the driveway, untouched, unmoved. A silent rebellion against the HOA's grip. Isolation. One evening, as I carried groceries from my car, my neighbor Allison approached me hesitantly. You should just get rid of it, she whispered, glancing nervously toward Karen's house. It's not worth it. Karen, she doesn't stop. Ever. I shook my head. It's my car. I didn't break any laws. Allison bit her lip. That doesn't matter here. She makes the rules. And if you go against her, the whole neighborhood turns. Her voice cracked like she'd learned that lesson herself. Before I could ask more, she hurried away. That night, I sat in the dark living room, listening to the tick of the clock. The weight of silence was crushing. Once this neighborhood had been friendly, lively, safe. Now it felt like enemy territory. Retaliation. The retaliation started small. Trash bags mysteriously appeared on my lawn. My mailbox was stuffed with crumpled flyers. Someone poured soda across my driveway, sticky under the morning sun. Then came a sound at night, scratches, faint taps, whispers of movement outside my window. I'd rush out with a flashlight, but the street would be empty. One morning, I found a key scratch running down the side of the BMW. My hands clenched into fists. Karen's dog barked from her porch, and there she stood, sipping coffee, smiling like a queen on her throne. Shame, she called out sweetly. Looks like people really don't want that car here. Breaking point. I snapped. That evening, I marched across the street, fists shaking. You think you can push me out? I shouted. Karen raised an eyebrow, sipping her wine. Push you out? I don't have to. The rules are clear. You broke them. The community agrees with me. Her calmness enraged me more than her words. This is harassment. You're obsessed. You called the cops on me. You vandalized my car. Prove it, she cut in coldly. You can't. And tomorrow, when the board votes again, the fines will double. Let's see how long you last. The door slammed in my face. I stood on her porch, trembling with rage, neighbors watching from the shadows. For the first time, I felt the real possibility that I might lose not just my car, but my home. A ray of hope. The next day, a letter arrived, not from the HOA, but from the county clerk's office. My earlier complaints about the HOA had triggered a small review. It wasn't much, just a request for me to provide evidence of misuse of authority by the HOA. But it was the first sliver of hope I'd seen. I gathered every letter, every photo, every timestamp. I documented the scratches, the trash, the police visit. I even printed Allison's brief text message. She won't stop. As I worked late into the night, the BMW gleamed outside, quiet and resolute. I swore I'd fight until the end. The suspense builds. But Karen was faster. The next morning, I woke to a commotion outside. Trucks, loud voices, neighbors gathering. I stepped out onto the porch and froze. A tow truck was backing into my driveway, chains rattling, its engine growling like a predator. The driver hopped out, clipboard in hand. "Got an order from the HOA," he said flatly. "This vehicle's being removed today." My chest tightened. "No, it's not. That car is mine." Karen appeared at the curb, arms crossed, lips curling into a triumphant smile. "Finally," she said. "Goodbye, stolen car." And as the tow truck lowered its hooks, the neighborhood watched in silence, half curious, half thrilled, all complicit. End of chapter. Suspense. I stepped off the porch, heart pounding, fists shaking. "Touch that car," I growled, "and you'll regret it." The tow driver hesitated, eyes darting between me and Karen. Karen laughed coldly, raising her phone. "Go ahead. Threaten him. I've got everything recorded." The chains clinked, the crowd whispered, and the engine roared. And I knew in that moment, the real war was just beginning. Chapter 6. The Tow Truck Standoff. The roar of the tow truck's engine rattled my bones. The grinding of gears, the clinking of chains, it all sounded like a countdown to disaster. My BMW gleamed in the sunlight, quiet and proud, the centerpiece of a war I hadn't asked for but could no longer escape. I stood at the edge of the driveway, fists balled tight, sweat dripping down my temples. The driver, a broad man in a stained cap and work boots, adjusted his gloves and gave me a tired look. He didn't seem eager for a fight, but his job was clear. "Look, man," he said, "I don't want trouble. I've got the order right here." He waved a clipboard with an HOA seal stamped across the top. "They told me to remove this car. I get paid either way." "That's my car," I snapped. "It's not stolen. It's not abandoned. You're not touching it." From across the street, Karen's laugh sliced the air. She stood on her perfect lawn, sunglasses glinting, phone raised to record every second. Her little dog barked like an alarm clock that wouldn't shut off. "See?" she said loudly, so the gathering neighbors could hear. "Threats and aggression. He's unstable. This is exactly why the car has to go." The driver shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, if you resist, I'll have to call the police." "You really want that?" My jaw tightened. "Go ahead. Call them. They've already been here. They know this car is mine." The crowd gathers. It wasn't just Karen watching now. Doors opened. Curtains parted. People filtered out of their houses, murmuring as they crossed lawns to get a better view. The Johnsons whispered on their porch. Allison stood at the corner, arms folded, biting her lip. Even Mr. Fletcher, the old man who once complimented the BMW, leaned on his cane at the edge of the crowd. The whole neighborhood was here, watching, waiting. Karen's voice carried above the murmur. "Neighbors, you all heard the vote. The board decided. That car doesn't belong. It lowers property values. It's a threat to our community standards." A few heads nodded reluctantly. Others just avoided my eyes. "This is harassment," I shouted, voice raw. "You're all seeing it. She's abusing power. She's trying to take something that belongs to me." But the silence that followed told me everything. No one wanted to side with me. Not openly. Fear of Karen's retaliation kept their mouths shut. The driver's dilemma. The tow truck driver sighed, stepping closer. "Look, I don't care about your HOA drama. I'm just here to do a job. Either you let me hook it up, or I got to get the cops involved. You're not taking it." My voice was steady now, low and cold. I planted myself in front of the BMW, blocking the path. Karen smirked. "Record that, Max," she said to her phone, zooming in. "He's obstructing. This is going to look great for the police report." The driver rubbed his face, muttering, "I don't get paid enough for this." Tension boils. Minutes stretched like hours. The sun beat down. Sweat dripped into my eyes. The crowd buzzed with whispers, but no one moved. Finally, the driver reached for his phone. "Fine. I'm calling the cops. They'll sort this out." Karen grinned like a chess master about to declare checkmate. "Perfect. Let them come. Maybe this time they'll take you away instead of just warning you." My pulse hammered. I could already see it, the cops pulling up, Karen spinning her story, me standing alone against an entire board, an entire neighborhood. And every minute that car stayed in the driveway, the fines doubled. I couldn't win this by standing still. The call. The driver stepped aside, phone to his ear. Yeah, this is Ray. About a situation on Redwood Lane. Homeowners refusing removal of a vehicle. HOA order. Yeah. Uh-huh. He's blocking me. Okay. Send someone over. He hung up, eyes down. They'll be here soon. Karen clapped her hands once, delighted. Finally, justice for our community. I could feel the eyes of every neighbor drilling into me. Judging. Waiting. Enjoying the show. The humiliation burned worse than the heat. Allison speaks. Then, a small voice broke the silence. This is wrong. Allison stepped forward, arms crossed tight. Her face was pale, but determined. Karen, you can't do this. You know he owns that car. We all know it. You can't just take it away because you don't like it. Karen's smile faltered. Allison, dear, maybe you should sit down before you embarrass yourself. No, Allison said firmly. You've been bullying him since day one. Calling the cops, making fake reports, vandalizing. Karen snapped. Careful what you accuse me of. But Allison didn't back down. Everyone's thinking it. I'm just saying it. The crowd stirred. A few whispers of agreement drifted through the air. Hope sparked in my chest. For the first time, someone had stood beside me. Police arrive. Sirens cut through the tension. A squad car rolled up, lights flashing red and blue. 2 officers stepped out, hands resting casually on their belts. One officer recognized me instantly. You again, he muttered. Karen swooped in before I could speak. Officers, thank goodness you're here. He's threatening the tow driver, blocking removal of a stolen car. It's not stolen, I barked. You checked the papers yourself last time. The officer sighed. Ma'am, we already verified ownership. This car is his. Karen's smile froze, then cracked. Well, then he's obstructing a legal HOA order. The second officer frowned. An HOA order doesn't give a tow company authority to seize private property unless there's a city ordinance violation. Is this car abandoned, blocking a hydrant, or illegally parked? The driver shook his head. Nope, just here in his driveway. The officer turned back to Karen. Then this tow isn't happening. Karen's outburst. The neighborhood gasped. Karen's face went crimson. Her dog barked frantically as she sputtered. You can't ignore the HOA bylaws. They voted. This car is against the rules. The officer remained calm. Ma'am, HOA rules don't override state law. You can issue fines, sure, but you can't seize someone's property without a court order. The tow driver shrugged. Well, guess I'm done here. Don't want trouble with the cops. He climbed back into his truck. Karen's voice cracked into a scream. No, you can't let him win. He's destroying this neighborhood. But the officers were already walking back to their cruiser. The crowd began to thin. People muttered, shook their heads, drifted back into their homes. Allison gave me a small nod before retreating. For a moment, it seemed I had one. Karen's threat. Karen stayed. Her phone lowered slowly, her expression twisting into something darker than rage. You think this is over? She hissed. You humiliated me. In front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you just done? I stared at her, exhausted but unwilling to show fear. I did what's right. She leaned closer, her voice low but venomous. You have no idea how much power I have. You won't last here. I'll bleed you dry with fines. I'll drag you through court. I'll make sure you regret the day you parked that car in this driveway. Then she turned sharply, yanking her barking dog inside and slamming the door hard enough to rattle windows. The aftermath. Silence settled again over Redwood Lane. The tow truck rumbled off. The cops drove away. The crowd dispersed. But I couldn't shake Karen's words. They weren't just anger. They were a promise. Inside, I sat in the dim kitchen, staring at the pile of HOA letters. The fight wasn't finished. It had only escalated. I thought of Allison, her bravery in speaking up. I thought of the neighbors who looked tempted to follow her lead, but still shrank back in fear. Maybe, just maybe, there's a way to turn the tide. Cliffhanger. As I sat there, a sharp knock rattled my front door. I froze. It was too late for visitors. I opened it slowly, only to find another envelope taped to the frame. This one was thicker, stamped with bold black ink. Notice of intent to place lien on property. My stomach dropped. Karen had lost the battle today, but she'd already prepared for the next one. And this time, she wasn't just after my car. She was coming for my house. Chapter 7, The Lien. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. My hands shook as I carried it back inside, ripping the seal like it might explode. Inside was a 3-page notice from the HOA's attorney, words stamped in bold. Notice of intent to place lien on property for non-compliance and outstanding fines. I read the sentences twice, 3 times, each one tightening like a knot around my chest. A lien meant the HOA wasn't just coming after my car. They were coming after my house. My sanctuary. My life's biggest investment. Karen had lost the tow truck battle, but she had regrouped with legal firepower. I dropped the letter on the table, staring at the BMW through the blinds. It sat there innocently, polished and perfect, as though it had no idea it had sparked a war. Cracks in the armor. The next morning, I noticed whispers spreading faster than usual. Neighbors clustered in driveways, eyes flicking toward my house and then away. When I stepped outside, conversations went silent. The Johnsons pretended to adjust their mailbox. Mr. Fletcher turned his back. Even Allison, my only ally, avoided my gaze. When I finally caught up to her by the corner, she spoke quickly, low, and nervous. "They're saying Karen's serious this time," she whispered. "If she files that lien, it could go to foreclosure. You could lose everything." "She can't do that," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "She can," Allison replied. "She's done it before." My stomach twisted. Before? To who? Allison glanced toward the end of the street, where an empty house sat with weeds choking the yard. The Ramirez family. They fought her. They're gone now. The image hit me hard. The boarded windows, the cracked driveway. Another casualty in Karen's reign. The HOA meeting. That week, another HOA meeting was called. I almost didn't go, but something inside me, anger, pride, desperation, pushed me through the clubhouse doors. The room was packed. Karen sat at the head of the board's long table, lips curled into a thin smile. Her gavel tapped once, commanding silence. "We have serious business tonight," she announced. "This community has rules, and rules keep us safe, organized, valuable. But some residents think they are above those rules." Her eyes flicked to me. The crowd followed. I stood slowly. "I've done nothing illegal. That car is mine. You've all seen the police confirm it." Karen's smile didn't falter. "And yet, it remains unapproved. And now, the fines exceed $8,000. Tonight, we vote to proceed with a lien." The crowd murmured. I caught a few guilty glances, but no one spoke up. My heart pounded as I raised my voice. "You're letting her weaponize this HOA against me. This isn't about rules, it's about power. If she can do this to me, she can do it to anyone here." A silence followed. For a moment, I thought anyone, might step forward. But the weight of Karen's stare silenced them all in favor of authorizing a lien. Karen asked sweetly. Hands rose, one after another. I counted them. Too many. Karen's gavel struck the table. Motion passed. The sound echoed in my skull like a gunshot. Desperation. Back home, I tore through binders, old emails, anything I could use as evidence. I stayed up past midnight, lit only by my desk lamp and rage. Each letter from the HOA was stacked in neat piles. I highlighted contradictions, circled arbitrary fines, printed every photo of the vandalism. But the deeper I dug, the clearer it became. They had me. Their rules, their votes, their paper trail. It all stacked against me like a fortress. When I finally looked at the clock, it was 3 a.m. My eyes burned. My body ached. Still, I couldn't stop. The BMW sat outside, reflecting the pale moonlight. I whispered to myself, I won't let them win. Allison returns. 2 days later, a knock at my door startled me. It was Allison. She looked nervous but determined. Karen's pushing too far, she said. I talked to a lawyer once after what happened to the Ramirez family. There are limits to what the HOA can do. They can fine you, but if you fight the lien in court, sometimes judges side with homeowners. I let out a bitter laugh. Sometimes, that's all I get. It's better than nothing, she said softly. And you're not alone. People are scared of Karen, but they're starting to see what she really is. What she does. I studied her face. She was telling the truth, but fear still clung to her words like a shadow. Why help me? I asked. Allison looked away. Because I should have helped the Ramirez family. And I didn't. Her guilt was heavy. My resolve hardened. Retaliation in the night. That night, it happened again. Scratches. Thumps. The sound of movement outside. I rushed to the window, heart racing, and saw two hooded figures darting away from my driveway. I threw open the door, sprinted into the night, but they were already gone. My stomach dropped when I saw it. The BMW. The windshield was shattered. The hood keyed deep, letters carved into the paint. One word. Thief. I stood frozen, staring at the vandalized car, rage boiling into something darker. Karen's porch light flicked on. She stood there in her robe, sipping tea, smiling faintly. Shame, she said sweetly. But maybe now you'll understand the community doesn't want that car here. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. But I didn't give her the satisfaction of an answer. Breaking point. The next morning, I called the police again. An officer took photos, filed a report, but his tone was flat, detached. Without cameras or witnesses, it'll be hard to prove who did this. Karen stood nearby, pretending to water her flowers, listening. When the officer left, she called out cheerfully, "Maybe you should just sell the car, dear. Save yourself the stress." I walked straight up to her. For the first time, I let the rage out. "You're going to regret this," I hissed. Karen's smile widened. "Threats again? Careful. I've been recording all morning." The camera on her porch blinked red. I forced myself to step back. If she wanted me to explode, I wouldn't give her that victory. But inside, I felt the cracks. Something had to give. A new ally. That evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello." The voice on the other end was deep, steady. "Mr. Parker? My name's David. I used to live in Redwood Lane. I heard about your situation." I frowned. "Ow. Word gets around. I lost my house here 5 years ago. Karen's HOA forced me out, but I didn't stop digging after I left. I've got files, documents, proof of what she's been doing." I gripped the phone tighter. "Proof? Yes. Embezzlement. Illegal fines. She's been using the HOA like her personal bank account. Meet me tomorrow. I'll show you." The line clicked dead. I stood there, stunned, heart racing. For the first time, I had something more than anger. I had a lead. Cliffhanger. The next morning, I opened the blinds. The BMW sat in the driveway, scarred and broken, but still mine. And across the street, Karen watched from her porch, sipping coffee like a queen surveying her kingdom. But she didn't know what I now held, a thread that might unravel everything. I whispered to myself, "Your reign is ending, Karen." And with that, I grabbed my keys, ready to meet the man who might finally turn the tide. Chapter 8. The Whistleblower. The meeting. The diner was almost empty that morning, just the smell of burnt coffee and the hiss of a fryer somewhere in the back. I slid into a booth near the window, nerves tapping at my ribs. A few minutes later, he arrived. David was tall, mid-50s, weathered face, but his eyes were sharp, like a man who had been burned before and learned to live with scars. He carried a thick leather briefcase that looked too heavy for just papers. "You Parker?" he asked, voice low, steady. "Yeah," I said, extending a hand. He didn't shake it. Instead, he slid into the booth across from me, placing the briefcase on the table. His eyes flicked around the room before focusing back on me. "I don't have long. Karen still has her people around this town. Some of them would rat me out in a second if they saw us together." That alone made my pulse spike. "You said you had proof." "Files." David nodded. "I do. But you need to understand something first. Karen isn't just a control freak with an HOA. She's built an empire out of this community, and she's been doing it for years." He opened the briefcase. Inside were stacks of folders, manila envelopes stuffed to the brim, and USB drives taped with labels. He pushed one folder toward me. "Start here." I opened it, expecting more HOA fine print, but instead I saw bank statements. Transfers. HOA dues routed into accounts with Karen's name on them. "She's stealing," I whispered. David's lips curved into a bitter smile. "Not stealing. Laundering. She finds residents, invents violations, pushes liens. Most pay up because they're scared. The ones who fight, they lose their homes. Then Karen has friends who swoop in, buy cheap at foreclosure, and sell for profit. She takes a cut every time. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's illegal. That's criminal. David leaned closer. Exactly. But nobody's caught her. She keeps it small, spreads it out, hides behind legal language. Judges shrug it off as civil disputes. The warning. I flipped through the papers faster, adrenaline rushing. Every page made the picture clearer. Karen wasn't just an overbearing neighbor. She was a predator. Why give this to me? I asked. David's expression hardened. Because I tried once. I went to court to the county. Karen buried me in counterclaims. HOA lawyers drained me dry. I lost my house, my savings. My family walked out on me. She ruined me. The words carried the weight of someone who had lived through hell. I couldn't stop her, he continued. But maybe you can. You've already stood up to her. People are watching. Neighbors who are scared. They're waiting for someone to prove she's not untouchable. I wanted to believe him. But doubt gnawed at me. And if I try, she'll come after me harder. She's already vandalized my car. She's trying to take my house. What happens when she finds out I've got this? David stared at me for a long moment, then spoke quietly. Then you'd better be ready to finish the fight. Cracks in Karen's power. When I returned home, I hid the folder beneath a floorboard in my office. My mind spun with possibilities. For the first time, I had more than anger. I had ammunition. But Karen sensed something had changed. That evening, as I stepped outside, she was waiting on her porch with her ever-present teacup, her dog at her feet. Lovely day, isn't it? She called out, voice honeyed. I do hope you're settling into our community values. I didn't answer. I just looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, she seemed smaller. Her smile faltered, just for a second, spreading the seeds. The next day, I went to Allison. She opened the door, eyes tired, but when I showed her the documents, her hands flew to her mouth. Oh my God, she whispered. I knew she was bad, but this is bigger than fines and liens, I said. She's stealing from everyone. Allison paced the room, her voice shaking. If the others saw this, if they knew, they'd turn on her. I finished. But Allison's face tightened. Not all of them. Some are terrified. Some owe her. Some like the power she gives them. It won't be easy. I nodded. Nothing about this has been easy. The first move. That night, I slipped copies of one bank statement into 3 mailboxes. Just 3. Neighbors I thought I could trust. By morning, whispers had spread like wildfire. At the mailbox cluster, I overheard Mrs. Lee whispering to Mr. Fletcher. She's been taking our money. Don't say that out loud, Fletcher hissed. You'll end up like Parker. But the seed was planted. Doubt. Suspicion. When Karen strutted by, her usual smile plastered on, people looked at her differently. Not openly hostile, but less obedient. Less certain. And Karen noticed. Karen strikes back. That afternoon, a knock thundered at my door. When I opened it, Karen stood there flanked by 2 HOA board members, clipboards in hand. Mr. Parker, she said sweetly, we've received reports of you distributing false and defamatory material about this association. That's a serious violation. I crossed my arms. It's not false. And it's not defamatory if it's true. Her eyes narrowed. The sweetness cracked. You think you're clever. But I run this neighborhood. And if you keep this up, you'll wish you had left quietly. The board members scribbled notes like obedient soldiers. I leaned closer. Maybe your kingdom's not as strong as you think. Her jaw clenched. For the first time, I saw it. Fear behind her eyes. The storm gathers. The next few days were tense. Karen doubled down, sending out HOA emails warning of dangerous lies and one resident spreading poison. But neighbors started knocking on my door. Quietly, cautiously, they asked to see the papers. Some whispered thanks. Some begged me not to involve them. But slowly the tide shifted. And every time Karen passed by, I caught more glares, less respect. She was losing her grip. But like any cornered animal, that only made her more dangerous. The midnight call. It was nearly midnight when my phone rang. Unknown number. Parker, the voice said, rough and urgent. It was David. You've stirred the nest. Karen knows you met with me. She's looking for me now. My throat went dry. What do you mean? She's sending people. Board members. Loyal ones. They'll try to discredit me, destroy the files. You can't let her. Those documents, hide them. Guard them with your life. The line went dead. I sat in the dark, heart hammering, realizing this was no longer just about fines or cars or even a house. This was war. Cliffhanger. The next morning, I stepped onto my porch. The BMW still sat scarred in the driveway, a symbol of defiance. But now there was something else. A white envelope taped to my front door. No stamp, no name, just a single word written in bold black marker. Stop. I tore it open with trembling hands. Inside was a photo of me, sitting in the diner with David. Someone had been watching, and Karen knew everything. Chapter 9. The Showdown. The envelope. The photo still shook in my hands. Me, sitting in that diner with David. Whoever took it hadn't just been spying. They'd been close, watching from inside. Karen knew. I burned the picture in my kitchen sink, but the image lingered in my head like a scar. It wasn't just about a car anymore. It wasn't even just about money or fines. It was control. Karen wanted me scared, and she wanted David erased. But fear wasn't what I felt anymore. It was rage, and I knew I couldn't wait. If Karen had seen the files, if she had her board members closing in, then the window to stop her was closing fast. I grabbed the folder I had hidden under the floorboard. It was time, calling the neighbors. That evening, I went door to door. Not timidly, not quietly. Bold, determined. At Allison's, I showed her more files, bank transfers, fake maintenance expenses, HOA funds routed straight to Karen's personal account. At the Johnsons', I laid out copies of foreclosure records tied to Karen's friends. At the Lees', I held up photos of empty houses, victims like the Ramirez family. Some were shocked, some were doubtful, but more than a few looked furious. Tomorrow, I told them, the HOA is having its monthly meeting. We've all been afraid of Karen, but tomorrow we stop her. The meeting begins. The clubhouse was packed the next night. Every chair filled, people standing along the walls, murmurs spreading like static. Karen sat at the head of the board's table, gavel in hand, her smile stretched too wide, too controlled. Order, she called, tapping the wood. We're here to discuss violations, liens, and... Not tonight, I cut in. My voice was louder than I expected, but it carried through the room. Tonight we talk about you. The murmurs swelled. Karen's eyes narrowed. Mr. Parker, you are out of order. I held up a folder. Then maybe you should explain this. Transfers from HOA accounts into your personal bank. Thousands of dollars. Month after month. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen laughed lightly, dismissive. Fabrications. Lies printed by a man desperate to escape his debts. Then explain this too. I shot back, slapping down foreclosure documents. Every house you forced out, snapped up by your friends at half price, and then resold for profit. And you take a cut every time. I saw heads turning, whispers spreading like fire. Allison stood. It's true. I've seen the records. He's not lying. Others chimed in. The Johnsons, Mrs. Lee, even Mr. Fletcher, who had always kept his head down. Karen's mask cracked. Her face flushed red. Karen's counterattack. She slammed the gavel down, the sound like a gunshot. Enough. Do not listen to this poison. He is a thief, a criminal. He's trying to destroy this community from within. She turned to the board members, flanking her. Do it. One of them pulled out a stack of papers. Karen smirked. You all should know something. Mr. Parker here is facing foreclosure himself. We voted last week to finalize his lien. He won't even own that house in a month. Gasps filled the room. She leaned forward, savoring the moment. And when he's gone, maybe then we'll have peace. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. My own fear, my own weakness, dragged into the light. She thought that would break me. But instead, I lifted the final piece of evidence. The smoking gun. This isn't just about me, I said, my voice steady. This is about all of you. Every dollar she's taken. Every family she's driven out. I held up a single page, David's most damning record. It showed HOA funds being wired directly into Karen's personal vacation account, labeled under a fake landscaping expense. Tens of thousands of dollars. This isn't theory. This isn't rumor. This is theft. For the first time, Karen froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The room erupted. People shouted. Some stood up, fists raised. You stole from us. You ruined families. Ramirez didn't just leave, did they? You forced them out. Karen's eyes darted wildly, looking for control, but it was gone. The turning point. Board members shifted uncomfortably. One even slid his chair back. For the first time, Karen looked alone. I pressed harder. You've hidden behind rules, behind fear, behind this HOA. But tonight, everyone sees you for what you are. A fraud, a thief, a liar. The crowd roared in agreement. Karen's teacup smile was gone. Her face twisted, desperate, furious. You don't know what you're dealing with, she hissed. The police arrive. And then, as if on cue, the doors burst open. 2 uniformed officers strode in. Behind them, Karen's smug grin returned, faint but visible. Ah, she said, recovering her composure. Perfect timing. Officers, this man has been distributing stolen documents, harassing residents, threatening me personally. He's dangerous. The room erupted in protests, but the officers held up their hands. Sir, one said firmly, we need you to come with us. My heart hammered. For a moment, panic clawed at me. Was this it? Had she outmaneuvered me again? But then, something shifted. Neighbors stepped forward. Allison first, then the Johnsons, then half the room. He's telling the truth. She's the thief, not him. You can't take him. The officers looked at each other, uncertainty creeping in. Karen's face turned white. Karen's breakdown. This is my neighborhood, she screamed, voice cracking. You all owe me. Without me, this place falls apart. I built this community. I made it valuable. Her dog barked wildly at her feet, the leash tangling. Sweat dripped down her forehead. She was unraveling in front of everyone. You think you can survive without me? She raged. You'll be nothing. Property values will tank. Crime will take over. You'll beg me to come back. But the crowd wasn't buying it anymore. For the first time, she looked small, weak, and she knew it. The power shifts. The officer stepped forward again, but this time not toward me. Ma'am, one said carefully, we're going to need you to come with us instead. Karen's eyes bulged. What? No, I'm the victim here. But it was too late. The neighbors shouted, cheered, demanded she be investigated. And as the officers led her out, her voice echoed through the clubhouse. You'll regret this. All of you. This isn't over. Aftermath. The room was electric. People hugged. Some cried. Years of fear had broken in a single night. Allison turned to me, eyes shining. You did it. You actually did it. But my stomach churned. Because in the chaos, I realized something chilling. David hadn't shown up. The one man with the full set of files. The real hammer that could finish Karen. He was missing. And if Karen had known about our meeting, where's he now? Cliffhanger. That night, back at my house, I placed the remaining documents in a locked drawer. I stared at the BMW in the driveway, scarred but still standing, like me. Then my phone buzzed. A message. No number. Just 3 words. David is gone. My blood turned cold. Gone how? Gone where? The war wasn't over. It had only changed shape. Chapter 10. The last move. The HOA clubhouse felt like it was still vibrating from the chaos of the meeting. Neighbors had spilled into the parking lot, still murmuring, some in disbelief, others quietly triumphant. The flashing red and blue lights from the police cruiser painted the walls in jagged shadows. Karen had been escorted out screaming, her voice echoing against the asphalt as she shouted about conspiracies, theft, betrayal. Parker stood off to the side, his hands shaking, the file still tucked under his arm. David lingered near the door, his weathered face unreadable. The crowd, once ravenous, began to thin out, people whispering in clusters, their voices low and sharp like knives. For the first time in months, Parker allowed himself a slow breath. Maybe this was it. Maybe the nightmare was over. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Not yet. The silence after chaos. Back home, the BMW sat under a tarp, a wounded beast waiting for judgment. The vandalized words still cut across its hood beneath the covering, a reminder that some scars couldn't be hidden. Parker walked past it like one might pass a grave. Inside the house, Sarah was waiting, her eyes wide with worry. She had been watching the live stream neighbors had uploaded to the HOA meeting, her phone buzzing with comments and gossip. "Did they take her?" she whispered. Parker nodded. "For now. But Karen's not the type to go down quiet. She'll claw her way back." Sarah swallowed. "And if she does?" Parker didn't answer. His silence was enough. David's warning. 2 days later, David came to the house. He didn't knock. He was just there, standing on the porch with that battered leather briefcase, his face grim. "Got a minute?" he asked. They sat in the living room, blinds drawn, tension heavy. David spread the contents of his case on the coffee table. Emails, receipts, HOA financial records, even private correspondence Karen had tried to bury. "She's not just petty," David said flatly. "She's dangerous. You embarrassed her. You turned her own neighbors against her. You think she'll forgive that?" Parker's chest tightened. "She's in police custody." David shook his head. "Temporary. They don't have enough to hold her long term. And when she gets out, she's going to come for you harder than ever." Sarah's voice trembled. "So what do we do?" David leaned back. His eyes were cold. "We finish it. The shadow moves." That night, Parker couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt like a footstep. Every passing car headlight across the curtains made his heart pound. Around midnight, he heard it, the crunch of gravel outside. He slipped to the window and peered out. The tarp over the BMW had been ripped off. The car gleamed under the moonlight, broken and scarred. And standing in the driveway, as if summoned by his fear, was Karen. Her hair was wild, her clothes wrinkled. She clutched something in her hand, papers, maybe or photographs. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with manic fury. Parker's blood ran cold. She didn't knock. She didn't shout. She just stood there, staring up at the window where she knew he was watching. Then, slowly, she raised the papers in her hand and let them scatter across the driveway like dead leaves. And then she was gone. The papers. At dawn, Parker stepped outside. The papers were soaked in dew, edges curling. He crouched, gathering them, his hands trembling. They weren't random. They were copies of documents from David's case file. Records of HOA corruption, embezzlement, false fines. But in the corner of each page, Karen had scrawled one word in jagged, frantic ink. "Thief." Sarah came to the doorway. "What does it mean?" Parker stared at the papers, his stomach sinking. "It means she's not done. She's turning it around. She wants the neighborhood to think we're the liars, that we're the thieves." Sarah's face went pale. "And if they believe her?" Parker didn't respond. The twist of a knife. That afternoon, an envelope slid under their front door. Inside was a single photograph. It showed Parker standing outside the BMW weeks ago, garage door open, Karen the frame, pointing at him with her phone. In the corner of the photo was a timestamp, doctored but convincing, making it look like Parker had been caught in the act of stealing a car that wasn't his. On the back of the photo, in Karen's scrawl, were 4 chilling words. "Everyone will know soon. The neighbors turn." The following days were brutal. Neighbors who had once sided with Parker began pulling away. Whispers returned. Eyes lingered too long. The HOA board, though fractured, still had members loyal to Karen. Flyers appeared in mailboxes accusing Parker of fraud, of falsifying evidence against the HOA president. Even at the local grocery store, Parker could feel it. The sideways glances, the hushed voices. Karen had planted her poison well. Sarah clutched his arm one evening. "We're losing this. She's turning them." Parker clenched his jaw. "Not if we strike first." David's revelation. Late one night, Parker met David again at the diner. Rain pounded the windows, the neon sign outside flickering like a bad omen. "She's pulling strings," Parker said. "She's framing me." David was silent, staring at his coffee. Finally, he looked up. "You need to know something?" Karen wasn't acting alone. She had help. Someone on the inside gave her access to the records, the surveillance footage. Someone she trusted. Parker frowned. "Who?" David hesitated. Then, slowly, he slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements. Transfers. Money moving out of HOA accounts into private hands. Not just Karen's. Parker's eyes widened. David's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Your neighbor, Mark." The one who smiled, who nodded at meetings. He's been her ally the whole time. The confrontation. The next evening, Parker went to Mark's house. The porch light flicked on, casting long shadows across the neatly trimmed lawn. Mark opened the door, his expression tight, guarded. "Evening," he said flatly. Parker held up the folder. "I know." Mark's eyes flickered just for a second, enough to confirm it. "You don't want to get dragged into this," Mark muttered. "Walk away. Sell your place. Leave. Karen won't stop, and I can't protect you." Parker stepped closer, his voice low and hard. "You're as guilty as she is, and I'm not going anywhere." Mark's jaw tightened. Then he shut the door in Parker's face. The breaking point. Back home, Parker sat at the kitchen table, staring at the folder. Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes wet. "What if we can't win?" she whispered. Parker looked up at her, his face etched with exhaustion and fire. "Then we make sure she loses." The final night. The storm hit just after midnight. Thunder rattled the windows, rain hammering the streets. Parker woke to the sound of footsteps again, outside, near the driveway. He grabbed a flashlight, his heart pounding, and rushed out the door. The BMW sat in the rain, uncovered again. And there she was, Karen, soaked, wild-eyed, clutching a can of gasoline. "Stay back," Parker shouted. She laughed, a broken, manic sound. "You stole from me. You stole everything. If I can't win, I'll burn it all down." She lifted the can. Parker lunged, grabbing her wrist. They struggled, slipping in the rain, the can clattering to the ground. For a moment, everything went silent except the storm. Karen's eyes met his, furious, desperate, unhinged. Then headlights cut through the rain. A police cruiser screeched into the driveway. Officers jumped out, shouting, pulling Karen away as she screamed Parker's name, over and over, like a curse. The aftermath. Karen was taken away again, but this time, the gasoline, the witnesses, the storm, it was undeniable. Charges stacked against her. Even her allies began to scatter. The neighborhood was shaken, divided, but the tide turned. Whispers softened. Neighbors avoided Parker less. The board fractured beyond repair. David disappeared again, as quietly as he had arrived. His work was done. Parker and Sarah stood together one morning, staring at the BMW. The word thief still scarred its hood. "Do we fix it?" Sarah asked softly. Parker shook his head. "No, we leave it. Let remind everyone what she tried to do. What we survived. The final twist." Weeks later, a plain envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A typed message. Karen wasn't the mastermind. She was just the face. The money trail goes higher. Watch your back. D. Parker stared at the note, his hands trembling. Sarah stepped closer. "What does it mean?" Parker folded the paper, his jaw set. "It means," he said quietly, "this isn't over. If you love watching my video, then make sure to subscribe and like my video.